Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our webinar series, Embracing Change. We have Loy coming in from Malaysia today. He'll be with us in a few seconds, I guess, who's going to share with us his personal journey to succession and how it all came through. Loy? There we go. Welcome,
Hi.
Loy. Thank you
Hello.
for taking the time. I know it's late for you and very early for me in the morning. So welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
So let's begin, if you don't mind, with a little bit of a background about yourself, and then we'll go into the fun and fun in the sharing.
A little bit about my background. So let's see, where should I start? So I grew up in a family of 4 boys. My father didn't have very much education. He had only 3 years of formal education, but he was very entrepreneurial. He started a business, and we grew up pretty poor. But I never felt in poverty, because I mean, we always had food, but we must have been pretty poor, because I do recall that I do recall in my memory, in my childhood, that my grandfather was putting concrete on the floor, because the floor was just made of was just clay floor, and it wasn't the outside of the house, it was the inside of the house. And I do recall, as growing up, we didn't have running water, and we had a well for water, but we couldn't afford one well in one house, and the well was shared with our neighbor. And of course, we didn't have indoor toilets. Indoor toilets came later, and the toilets was away from the house. So I grew up in a small little village. My grandfather, my father's father, came from China as an immigrant in his teenage years, and he eked out a living. And my father didn't have very much education. Like I said, he had 3 years of education, and then he went off. He had to tap rubber in the old days, very early in the morning at about 1 a.m. At the age of 4 years old, he would have to wake up in the morning with his brothers to go and tap rubber. With the English, he went to trade school in the British Army, where he gained a knowledge of English. And at the age of 16, he was an enterprising young man. So he became a mechanic, and when the British was leaving Malaysia, he helped some friends to acquire land. Land was very scarce for the Chinese. They are always very associated with land, and so when the British left because of the communist insurgency in Malaysia in the 50s and 60s, he became a negotiator because he could speak English. He acquired it in the trade school in the British Army, and they then parceled out the land into smaller parcels and sold it to small businessmen. For his effort, he took a percentage of the profit. And so he began to do many of that, and he became very rich as a result of this. In 1969, Malaysia experienced race riots, and after that, the government industrialized the whole country, came up with a plan, and called for the industrialization so that more employment could be had. In quick succession, my father opened up something like 8 factories, and his business growth grew very rapidly after that. At the height, the company employed like about 28,000 people, and we were probably the 4th or largest banking group in the country, in Malaysia. And he was named one of the top 10 entrepreneurs in Malaysia as well. The business that he built over 35 years came crashing down in the 1997 financial crisis. My father had borrowed a lot of money in US dollars and he didn't hedge against it. And for those who are old enough to remember, in a matter of months, the local currency across Asia dropped against the US dollars. So anyone who had borrowed a lot of money in US dollars, all of a sudden, debts that was not able to be serviced. That was a time when he also passed away, and I assumed the mantle of CEO in his company. I was doing my own business. I worked for my father as soon as I graduated at the age of 21, 22. After about 5 years, I ventured off to do my own thing and largely stayed away to do my own thing. Before he passed away, he had cancer. Mother asked me to come back, and I rejoined the business. My second brother, I had four boys in the family. Yeah. The second brother was in the business at that time as well. About 18 months after I rejoined, my father passed away, and then there was the Asian contagion, and in a matter of months, all the effort that he has spent to build the business over 35 years came crashing down. My father said, as we were growing up, we used to share meals over dinner, and he likes to share experiences. Yeah. A lot of things he said were from my grandfather, who he admired a lot, and so along the same vein, he would pass on words of wisdom, so to speak, whether we wanted it or not. Yeah. And one of the things I remember him saying was that in business, you must only have one partner, one wife, he said.
Oh,
he
really?
said, in real life, I would advise you to only have one wife too, but in business, you got to focus on one thing. He had two parts of the business. One part was a public listed business, which was a lot larger. And another part was the unlisted, the private side. And so he had focused everything on the public side. What he meant when he said you must only have one wife is that you must only have one focus, and you have to decide. And his decision was that he was going to look after the public side of the business. And so all the wealth, all the main wealth was plowed into it. As the company grew, he had took on more debts, and in order to grow the business, he had got to put in more capital. And as the business grew rapidly, he would then pledge the shares of his holdings to banks to borrow more money to capitalize the business. And so the control over the public listed side was affected by loans taken out against the shares of the company. So after he died, and about 5 months later, after I became CEO, I implemented a scheme of arrangement, which really was a financial restructuring of the entire group. I saw that we were unable to have the cash flow to meet our financial obligations, and the proper thing to do was to call for a standstill so that we could negotiate with the banks. Yeah. With good intentions to pay back everyone, I thought. What I didn't realize from lack of experience is that once something like that is declared, that we cannot pay the banks, can you guys just please hang on while we sort things out? That was the death knell, because it meant that any existing lines would be frozen. And when cash was restricted, it's very difficult to do business. As a result of that, the business was lost. And when my father said, he put everything into the business, after he passed away, we realized that, even the house that we stayed in was a company house. The cars that we were driving were company cars. And so, in fact, a large part of the business was lost. In the process, as I was a CEO, we had to sell off a lot of the businesses the businesses were sold so that cash could be raised, so that a financial package could be formulated, and then we could deal with the banks. One of the businesses that was sold was a small education group called Taylor's. Yeah, my father's company owns 67% of that. About 5 years later, we were able to buy a minority stake by the minority partner who wanted to sell. And after that, we were able to build a new business in education. Okay. So I have been in education we bought it 20 years ago. It was in 2001 that we bought the business. My second brother was supposed to run the business while I dealt with the banks. All my family members, or the adult family members, including my wife, had stood as guarantees for my father's debt, and so we all had this large financial obligation to deal with. Unfortunately, my brother passed away in a car accident about a couple of years after we acquired that small stake, and then it was left largely to me as the only sibling in the business to move forward with building something. So perhaps I'll just stop there.
So if you, thank you for that intimate sharing. So if you were to go back to 97 when you had that situation with the banks, what would you share? Just, I know it's the business side, we're going to go more on the family side. What would you share in terms of what would you have done? What would you do differently with what you know today? How would you approach that standstill, knowing that there's a possibility of a cash flow choke as soon as you announce that we'd like to pause? Is there another way, or is it?
Yeah, I would probably have tried something else.
Okay.
I would have tried disposing some businesses that we could dispose. We still needed to do that. I would then have, we should have looked at a lot of the businesses that were not yielding a profit and considered closing them down and selling them off to raise cash. One of the things with my father too, and this is one of the sayings that he used to teach me, was that if you, once you put up your signboard, in the Chinese who say that, you don't put it down. I wasn't sure whether it was partly ego that you don't do that, but I think when he said it, it meant that when you want to do something, you got to be really proud of it, and when you put a signboard up there, it's supposed to be there forever. It's permanent. You want to be able to send a message to the community that you are here and you are here to stay. Yeah. I think that was what you're saying. That should be the way in order to get loyalty and trust of the community.
Yeah.
However, not all businesses can always be profitable. And so when we run a conglomerate, we are always not so blessed that every part of our business are yielding and doing well. And so we have to make tough decisions sometimes to cut off a product or a service, or to cut off a company and then do that kind of thing. That wasn't done. Yeah. So I guess that was one of the things that we could have done.
Okay. So in terms of debt, what is your? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The other thing that should have been done, would have been to ensure that the successors have the best chance of success. And that means that successors who are in the business should be introduced to all the important people, partners, bankers especially, so that there's a familiarity, introduced to the business in a lot of different respects too. The business succession, I guess, wasn't handled well, given that he had cancer for 5 years. There was adequate time to put quite a lot of things in place. Yeah.
So now what is your approach towards debt after that experience? Are you the other extreme now or somewhere in the middle? Like what
I
is?
tell my, I get, that's a really good question, by the way. I tell my managers that that the best way to identify a good manager is not when they are on the job. It's a year or 2 years after they have left the job, and to see how well their department or their business are doing. The mark of a good manager is is how well they have left it, and how well the business can survive without them, to put things in place. And so the lesson which I learned from this episode, it was a really traumatic episode because one moment I was like the son of a billionaire, and the next moment we didn't even have a house that belonged to us or a car which is our own. And it took a long time, many years, to get myself wrapped around it, my head wrapped around that. What I have learned from that is that need not be. That handover in succession must be handled in a much more structured manner, and the handing over should start way before the final departure. So if I'm going to leave at a certain age, let's say at age 65, I'm going to be 60 years old at the end of this year, the handing over process should start years before then. Yeah. Introductions to the people that matters, to the stakeholders, to the staff, training in different areas. And there's a lot of things besides just handing over a title too. Yeah.
So going back to the debt side, you didn't get into that. Are you like for us?
Yeah.
We're taught, we are basically cash people, right? For us as Gujus, debt is not something that we're very comfortable with, right? So obviously you had this experience of, which is extremely traumatic, right? From being a billionaire to not having a home or a car because of the debt, right? That was taken, and the risks and lack of succession. And obviously there's a lot of other factors.
Yeah. Some debt is good.
Okay.
So that we can leverage the assets of the company well. Too much debt is no good. Some debt can be your friend. Too much debt becomes your enemy. Yeah, there's just too much risk. We have very good financial controls now. I also listen to bankers a lot.
Okay.
And bankers nowadays are a lot smarter too. They give all their borrowers a lot of banking covenants too, debt ratios, etc. too. I and my financial team regularly meet with our bankers. We tell them when things are going well. We tell them when things are not going well. As a matter of fact, when this pandemic started last year, and we couldn't go out, I called out CEOs, the bankers that we dealt with. I told them how we think, how bad the situation is, how many students we will lose, etc. I told them that we might make a loss for the year, and these are our plans and what we wanted to do. I told my family the same thing too. To my surprise, the bankers appreciate it.
Exactly.
And some of them said, if you need more money, we can lend it to you. I said, no, we don't want any more money. We want to cut costs and control things. When bankers get frightened, something must be wrong, because bankers always want to lend you more money. The more money you borrow from them, the more money they make. But they get really worried if they feel that there might be an occasion or a chance that you might not pay them back, right? And so when a trusted banker is worried, that's the time when we have to listen. So that's one thing.
Okay.
I have a very open and transparent system with the people who report to me, including CFOs and all that. And they are the first line of people who gets concerned if they feel that we are unable to service our debt. Yeah. So that's a part on the business is to grow at a manageable pace and not to overstretch ourselves. Yeah.
So just in terms of the impact on the children, were you married and the kids were already born when this happened, or not yet?
When this thing happened, I had 3 girls already.
Okay.
And my son was born the following year.
Okay.
So I had 4 children. They are fortunate that they were too young to experience this. And in my family, I guess, me and my second brother who passed away.
Yeah.
His wife and sister-in-law works with the business, so she was right in the thick of things as well.
Wow.
My wife, of course, knows what was happening.
Yeah.
My mother isn't really involved in the business, but she's kept informed what happened. I have 2 other younger brothers and the sister, and they were too young. They were like overseas studying, and so they are the lucky ones.
Were they able to continue studying, or was that also disrupted?
Yes.
They were able to continue? Okay, that's
yes,
good.
In fact, one of the first things I did, we had a couple of apartments, which my father has bought in Canada, and I told my mother, transfer those apartments to my brothers, so that's their cash to complete their education. If we have nothing left, at least they get educated, and hopefully they can look after themselves.
Okay.
So education is always very important, because you never know when you need it. Children from a wealthy family may never even imagine of a time when money is not accessible or not available. And in a way, that's bad. They're very blessed that they don't come across such a situation in their life. But in another sense, going through such traumas can strengthen us. I remember that we live in this big house during those days. As part of the contribution my father made to the company, the board decided to give the house to my mother, but it came with a debt, and we had to service the debt. So during those days, I had to change the lights in my house to energy saving lights. We had this beautiful thing that you can adjust and all that. I changed everything out because I told them I want to save electricity, because we might not be able to pay electricity. Yeah. Unless we are faced with a traumatic incident like that and forced to go through it, our worldview is always very different.
But that's the thing, right? I mean, they can take everything from you, but they can't take you, right? Which is what happened, right? And then, obviously through that brutal experience, you make different choices, right? But so with the kids of that notion that they can take everything, but they can't take you. So education, as you said, is a priority, which your siblings were blessed to have you support that decision.
Yeah, this is one of the things I think about all the time. How to have it so that my kids or the next generation can acquire resiliency, can know that they can overcome things. Because if they haven't suffered, they haven't fallen down, they never know whether they can get up after they've fallen down. And I would like, of course, as any parent would, to be around to help when that happens. But we are never ever going to be around forever, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, how do you move from being a crutch, right? Being around and watching a car crash or versus, which is empowerment, right? You let them experience what's needed, versus being the crutch to solve the issue at hand. How do you create that balance?
Yeah, that's a perennial question. How do we do that, and how much do we keep away when they are struggling? I have a view though, and it's a personal view, that everyone has to fight their own battles.
Has there? Sorry, say it again.
That everyone has to fight their own battles.
Yeah.
So long as they are not getting killed, for example, then it is a battle that they need to fight on their own. We can be there to help, to support, and to cheer. But it is something that they need to go through. I recall the story I've been told before, that I read about a little boy who found a butterfly coming out of the cocoon. Right? Was struggling, couldn't come out. It took a long time. And the little boy decided to help it, peel away the cocoon a little bit, and so that the butterfly could crawl out. And then the little boy waited to see whether the butterfly would eventually take off and fly. The butterfly never did. It never did because it needed the struggle to put fluids through the wings or whatever, so that through that tough process, it could metamorphosize into a fully blown, beautiful insect. And so every person needs to have an opportunity to go through their own trials. Because from the trials, there's just so many lessons that we learn. I, for example, I think I have had a very tough life. Although the first part of my life was smooth sailing, but I really cherished the problems which I had, the 14 years that it took us to pay off all our family's debts.
Because 14 years. Wow.
It took me 14 years to eventually get all my family out of their guarantees and to have a loan repaid. That's a long time.
So from that can come two things, right? Also can come fear of loss again. Do you feel that the resilience has allowed you not to have that fear? Or do you feel, because that's the two sides, right? That can result from that. Do you feel that you are willing to take the risk as an entrepreneur, or are you a lot more risk averse?
Yeah, I guess it impacts people differently. For me, it makes me more cautious. It has made me much more cautious. It has made me realize that I'm not infallible. It has made me be more open to listen to my guys. As entrepreneurs, we always think about the successes. Very few entrepreneurs start a business thinking they can fail. Right? And so it is in the nature of entrepreneurs to be positive, and sometimes they can be very unrealistic. So it hasn't made me adverse to new ventures, but this lesson has been very valuable. To listen, to not over borrow, to not run too fast, because the faster we run, the harder we will fall.
All right, so let's maybe switch gears now to right. What we're going to speak about is, one is, you can choose which one you want to go first: succession planning that you're planning, and also how to enable or support the next generation to make their mark. Right, as we said, at the same time, learn the lessons, right? Fail or learn, whatever word you want to use, as they create what they want to, right? Within the system or outside the system.
I think they are interlinked. Both succession planning and helping the next generation make their mark are interlinked. They are one and the same thing, but different aspects of the same thing. And let me explain. I believe that people have the best chance of success if they do what they love. And it's easy because if you do something that you love, work doesn't feel like work. We will be able to spend more hours, more research, play with it more, discuss it more, and then that effort, that additional effort and time can convert to become an advantage, a competitive advantage, right? So it just makes sense that way. I don't think very much about business, a particular business as a legacy anymore. I used to think, oh yeah, the Taylor's Education Group, you know, I'm going to help, I'm going to build this, and it's going to be handed to the kids, and then they're going to hand it over to the grandkids, and you know, 500 years later, the university still exists, and that kind of thing. That would be nice, but I don't believe it's necessary, and I don't even believe that it's good. For me and my family to think like that, because of what I've just said. You become successful doing what you love, and not everyone is going to love education. For me, what is more important is the happiness of my kids and their cousins and of the next generation, a sense of success in whatever that they do, and being able to work together in a very tight, happy community of co-shareholders, and each of them could be doing different things. Yeah. We have, of the next generation, we have musically talented kids, we have artistic kids in design. And the question I've asked is, why do I want to deprive someone who's artistically inclined and good and force them to do something in business that they're no good? They don't do a favor to the business, and I'm not doing them a favor either. And they could grow up regretting that they have never had a chance to express their heart's desire. Yeah. So I don't think about legacy and succession in the traditional way anymore. What I think about is how is, you know, what do I have to put in place? What kind of structure do we need to design for ourselves so that the family will stay a family? So that in a very successful family, it's like a clan, it's like a tribe that people want to belong to. How can we design something such that every family member want to be part of the family? And we know that there are some families of which particular members do not want to be part of that family. So this is a very difficult question to do, because it means we have to try to understand what each child wants to do, how we can help that child in their own journey, in their own pursuit. At the same time, if they are going to be future shareholders, but if they are not going to work in the company, then as shareholders, we have to design something so that they can learn how to become good shareholders. They don't have to be good managers, but if they're going to be a director, how to become a good director. And it's a role that's very different from being a CEO or a senior manager. And so helping the next generation make their mark starts with first having conversations and understanding them and encouraging them. Yeah.
So that's beautiful, Loy. I mean, you know, we tend to forget that it's family business, family office. Family is always first. And we spend most of our energy on the business or the office.
That's right.
And you've made it very clear that you want to create that home, that nectar, that loving space that everybody wants to be part of, right? They want a part of that yumminess, right?
That's right.
And so because they're coming home, right? It's a coming home, right? That they yearn for, irrespective of age, irrespective of of what they do, whether they're the artist, whether they're the CEO. It doesn't matter, right? And at the same time, you're creating a space of responsibility that you need to learn to be a responsible shareholder in whatever form that is, director or beyond. Can you, I mean, you've already set that beautiful stage. Can you define a little bit more? I know you talked about loving what you do, right? In terms of happiness and success. Maybe a little, can you share a little bit more? How are you nurturing that process? I know we spoke about the coaching and the mentoring. Maybe share a little bit tangibility of how that sharing occurs. How does that empowerment process occur to help the next gen really go deep inside and be transparent and truthful of what is occurring for them?
I will start by first echoing what you just said about family business. In fact, I learned this from my number 3 brother. He has a PhD in family business, and he told me once. He says, "There's a difference between family business and business family. Do you know what it is?" And I said, "What?" He says, "In family business, the family comes before the business. And so you have to decide which one it is. If it's a family business you want, don't forget that the family comes first." So I've always remembered that, and that's kind of like the simple yet guiding principle in the things that we do. And so when we're trying to find a way in transitioning to the next generation, that kind of thinking becomes really useful. How can I think about it so that the individual, the family comes before my desire for the business? Because the individuals, the people are far more important. Number 1, it takes time. Number 2, it requires a lot of patience. And what I mean is this. Just reflecting on my own kids, I have I have 3 girls and 1 boy. And in fact 4. In fact, all 4 are working, but my son is like a part-time job. All 4 of them are working in investments or businesses of mine now. It wasn't like this before. My eldest daughter started working outside, and then she asked to join one part of the business in student accommodation. She worked there for 2 years, and then she said she had enough, she had learned enough, and she wants to do something else. And now she's doing investing in our business as well. And she's starting a family office for our family too. She seemed to have found what she really likes to do, and it has taken time. I couldn't have pushed her. Number 1, she's very headstrong. And number 2, I didn't need to, because she's very capable, very sure of what she needs for herself, which is time to look at different things. And I think she's finally found something which she enjoys. And so that will require a lot less effort. It doesn't feel like work for her, I hope. My second daughter also worked elsewhere, and she has also joined a business which we have invested in. And that's in the well-being and essential oil and body care line, which she loves. And actually, frankly speaking, one of the main reasons why we acquired that was because she introduced that to us, and when we were discussing this, I realized that, my goodness, all the ladies in my house, including my wife, all of a sudden had a great interest in this business. It was a very, very small business of two shops at that time, whereas Taylor's was a lot bigger, and they were not interested at all. And so we really have to try to think about businesses that they would find an appeal for. And my third daughter also worked elsewhere. And she's now working in the travel business, which is experiencing really, really tough times. Our business is down to like 2% of what we normally do because of the pandemic.
Wow.
I don't know whether she will ever stay in the in the travel industry permanently.
Okay.
I guess she will have to find her own way. And so this is what I mean by having patience, letting them explore. And when they have found something which they like, that's when we begin to help and enable and encourage to do so.
Okay. So, and when they're studying, when they're working outside, they come to you for guidance, and or is it more like you said, she's headstrong? So how is that process?
You know, and some of my kids might be on this call. So I don't give up very easily.
I didn't think so, Loy.
No. But I like to believe that I do it in a much more gentle manner. I ask about the work. I prod them along on a certain path. But if they are not interested, I'm very comfortable with that too. Yeah. I suppose there's a father in me that wants the best for the kids, and sometimes it's because we are a little bit impatient. We think that they're too chilled, maybe. We should move a little bit faster.
Yeah, because it's always, yeah, go ahead.
So what I have found in my family that really works is discussions about the family. Discussion about the family unit, who we are, who we can be, the value system that we want to promote. What I try to do as part of my succession is try to get everyone to play or to participate in a way that they're comfortable. It's in something. Recently, in the past couple of months, I engaged with my coach on a project called the Enduring Family. And that project is really about how do we organize our family and each individual so that the family endures for multi-generation. And it's not easy work, but it can be fun work too. Anything that you can do in a healthy family is always fun anyway too. I didn't know where it would go. My family all got together for like half a day with the coach, all on Zoom, and it took us through it. And then the coach reached out to me and said, "Are you guys ready to continue on for the next 6 months on this? Can we talk about it?" So I said, "Let me ask my kids to see whether they are interested." So I sent out a message and said, "Let's talk about this. When are you guys free?" Only one person responded. One person responded, right? And I didn't chase. Then I was on the phone in my second. I was having a forum meeting by PO, and there was a topic. And out of that topic, one of my realization was we don't need everyone to agree to something, because one person can become a majority. And we were talking about families, every generation, that in every generation, if you have just one entrepreneur that could perpetuate the family's wealth for the next generation, you don't need everyone to be a successful entrepreneur, and just one could do. And I was telling my daughter, and she was the one who responded. I was sharing with her, I said, we don't need everyone to respond, because if one person, if you are really interested, you become the majority. You just take the lead. I will work with you, and I'm quite confident that if someone takes the lead, everybody eventually will jump on the bandwagon, and they'll find a way to contribute and all that. So that's one of the ways that I try to move things along, to try to find a champion within my family that is interested in something, and then promote it. We also had, for many years now, in a larger family, a philanthropic committee trying to do good, because we wrote it in our values that we must try to help the community wherever we live and operate. But it's always been very tough going, because people are busy, and philanthropy is something that is easier done by just contributing money. But
Yeah.
contributing effort takes a lot of struggle for a lot of people. And unless we can find a champion, someone who's really driven by wanting to help and contribute, that committee will always struggle. It will be a chore. Yeah. So we are still on the lookout for a champion among the family who wants to lead this, because if someone will lead it, I'm sure other people will come onto the bandwagon.
Oh, that's incredible. And this is just going back to that comment. I just want to reaffirm what you said. A lot of, the family business, the family office, and your brother, reminded, right? And it's interesting when people coin the term, we're a business family, right? And it's really, they're coining it based on not having one core business. That means you're now investing and have multiple businesses or a family office, etc. But again, it's all driven by the element of the business, that it's multiple. It's not single, right? It's not driven by the family, right? And the definition of the family, right? And a lot of times it moves into shareholding, right? So before we go into, I'd like to ask you how you're preparing for your time, right? I prefer longevity. I don't use the word succession actually, right? It's just, it's a different stage of life, right? Before we go there, how do you balance when you say everyone's a shareholder? How do you balance what Warren Buffett says, enough to do something, but not enough to do nothing? How maybe this generation, it seems everybody's active. How will you work with that in the generations to come?
I think if we approach this question correctly, then it will lead us to a much more sustained way of doing it. Let me explain. A lot of times when we approach this question, we think in terms of money. Right. Okay, give them enough money, they are able to survive and all that. But if they don't have the values, if they are not taught, actually the quantum of money doesn't matter. No matter how much you give them or how little you give them, could be squandered or they may become very unwise once they see it. But if kids have the right values and the right relationship with the money, 100,000, 10,000, 100 million, and they are taught how to manage it properly, they can handle it. For my own kids, for many years now, we have I've structured myself, since you're quite interested in this. So I formed a new family, a new business control that controls my family's wealth about 3 years ago now. And I've designed it in such a way that there is no majority. All my 4 kids get 10%, my wife gets double, and I get double. So that makes 100%. My wife gets 20, I get 40. In this situation, there is no majority. Even I have to work with someone else if I want to push something through. It's specially designed like this. And if my kids want something else, they have to convince other people. So that means they need to work as a team. They need to know how to propose. They need to know how to convince and negotiate. They need to know how to participate and collaborate. They are forced to, and it's not about so much about managing wealth. It's about how to work together. If you can work together and have the right approach and methodology from young and doing it in one particular way, it doesn't matter whether your company becomes a multi-billion dollars, you still behave and act in the same way. You learn how to listen. You learn how to respect differences of opinions. And you learn that you don't always get your way. And yet you can believe it. And you also learn that even if you don't get your way, once a decision is made, you should align to it as if it was your decision as well. These are important principles and values to have. And if we can get these things right, managing well becomes a lot easier. Yeah. There are also rules should also be really important, clear-cut rules that everyone participates in so that they know the reasons and the spirit and the intent of why it was written in that manner. Yeah. So one of my daughters a few years ago talked to me. She said that there's some ambiguity about a particular case. He says that you need to sort it out. So I said, so I listened, yes, tell me. She said, if you don't sort it out and make it clear, when it comes to our generation, there will be quarrels. Wow. You have to make it very clear. Yeah, just talking about the wider family, not just for all the couples and everything. It gets very complex. She says you got to make it clear, and I thought that's a really wise thing to do, but not me writing it. Why don't we all write it? Yeah. Why don't we all share it and then give our opinion and then develop that concept or that paper ourselves? So we are all co-designers of the life that we want to have. Because and that's important because those that create will commit. Yes,
and co-creation is the way, right?
Yeah, it's not dumb on them. They say, I chose that word. Okay, that's me, So that document has a part of me in it as well. So
that's beautiful. So you're sharing on this 40, 20, and then 4 times 10, right? So
10, 20, 40.
Yeah. So going through now the planning in terms of the next stage of your life, can you share a little bit about what you have created or there's a timeline or what does that look like? So I mean, is there clarity?
I don't have a timeline because we never know when opportunity arises that we can push faster. If we push too early, my fear is that it becomes misunderstood, and it's unnecessary. We have a luxury in families because we think in terms of generation. So we can go as slow as the slowest person because we want everyone to come along. There's like the African saying goes, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that means we have to wait for everyone else. So that's the luxury that we have as a family, unlike in business. So I don't put a timeline to it so that I'm not forcing myself before it's ready. But what I do think of is allocation of time. How much time am I allocating to this business of family versus the business of business? Business of business is where we always spend our time. But how much time do we dedicate to this? So what I've done is I began to color code my calendar. Work, family, even time for myself personally, on health matters. And with the color coding, I can see very clearly in a week, in 2 weeks, am I off? It's a rough gauge, right? And what I would like to do is to begin to increase the time which I spend for family matters. Anything that I classify to be family, it could be going on holiday, having a meeting, a discussion with someone, going out for dinner, for example, celebrating a birthday like last night's dinner, which we had at home. So I think in terms of time.
Okay, so you will slowly work step by step, increase the time, and then go with the flow in terms of when it's time and what you choose. Because I mean, you're still very, very young, so it's. And I guess
in life it's like this. Things happen in my life. Things always seems to happen this way, slowly, and then suddenly it happens.
Yeah.
So we push, we prod a little bit,
Yeah.
we put ourselves back, and we watch how the situation develops, how the person develops, and then we push a little bit. And then all of a sudden, one day we woke up, they want to do it. There's a champion. A champion has a reason to take it further. Those are the moments I'm looking forward to, because then we can move very fast when the team is ready, when the group is ready, or when the family is ready. Yeah.
We've got about
and the thing I was just thinking of as I'm speaking to you is maybe it doesn't happen in my life, maybe what I envision doesn't happen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's okay, because it might not be up to me to finish it. It might be up to the next generation to take it, and then they complete it for themselves.
No, but that's, the whole concept that you spoke about in terms of legacy, right? This is something that is always been a debate, right? Especially when others, like some of us, have created entrepreneurial funds for our children. And I remember my son came to me when he was 9. So he's like, "Oh, Baba, so basically when I'm going to work for the business, and then when you retire, I take over." And the first question I said was, first, you don't need to wait for me to retire to take over. Let's be very clear. And secondly is, this is Baba's dream. Why would you want to live Baba's dream? You should live your dream.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. You should live the dream. Let's talk about your dream.
Yeah. And this was when he was 10 years old, right? And then later, at that time, I was running companies in crazy countries, right? So I wasn't very comfortable, right? That's why I had said it. Now I built Genetic Care, and I said, "Oh, maybe one day you want to take Genetic Care to the next level." And they responded to me, "But Baba, that's your dream. We want to live our dream." So sometimes it comes back to bite you, right?
You see, and that's exactly what I was trying to say. You get them to think, and one day you wake up, you feel safe, you feel happy that they are thinking in the right way. Yeah.
So that legacy question, right? It's selling off what you built, or them selling off what you built. I'm sure we just sold a business after 21 years. That was the core business we built. I sold it in January. It was an emotional process, right? It was your core baby, right? And it's easier said than done, right? We both know that, Loy, right? That if Taylor's business is eventually decided to be sold at some moment in time, even though it's the right decision, it makes sense because we're putting family first, there's still an emotional attachment to it, right? That we need to process. So Loy, we've got a couple minutes left. What some closing remarks, anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to share in terms of lessons or in terms of guidance? What's worked, what you would love to others to nudge, other than what we shared in terms of putting family first, not holding on to legacy, not imposing or expecting that, every kid is, entrepreneurial or anything of the sort?
I'm thinking that I used to say that family, and many of us will say family is the most important thing, right? And I've always been wondering, how do we measure that importance? And I think maybe I've arrived at my answer in this call today. It's very useful talking to you. And the realization is, the answer is, how much time are you spending on it? And then, if family is important, why should I be the only one who's doing it? Because it should be important for them too. If it's important, if family is important, it means it's important for them. We have to think of a way of how we could get them to participate, because they are an equal stakeholder. Every single family member of mine is an equal and important stakeholder in our family. We are all family members. In that regard, we are all peers in the family. And so what I want may not necessarily be what everyone else wants. so lesson for me is how much time am I spending on it, and how am I involving everyone? How can I encourage everyone to spend an equal amount of time in this unit that is so important?
Even though they're in a different stage of life, right? Because they're in a very different stage of life from you, right?
Yes.
They will eventually, if they choose to, have their own family, and that will take energy and time, right? I remember when we trained with Robin, they said, just give me your schedule and your expense account, and I will tell you your priorities. It's black and white. And that's what you're referring to, right? There's two things. Your time and your financial resources don't lie, because they're obvious, right, where it's being done. So thank you. Thank you. Let me just see if there's, okay, that's just a thank you note. All right, so thank you very much, Loy, for the time to be here today. I mean, I know it's late for you. Sorry to have kept you awake so late. For me, it's now 7 a.m., so it's very early for me. So we're in the opposite ends. So once again, thank you very much. Anything else you'd like to add before we call it a day? I think that was a beautiful,
it's a bad conversation.
Yes. So thank you for the intimate sharing. Truly appreciate it. And all of us have learned, including me. I'm now going to really reflect on what you shared in terms of time, in terms of putting that energy, right? Having those conversations, encouraging, right? Bringing that yumminess to the home, right? So that everybody can wants to be there, right? Because they yearn for it, as you shared. So thank you, Loy. Have a good night. Speak to you soon. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be here with us. And we'll see you soon on our next webinar in October. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Loy. Bye.